There were tears dripping from Haley's eyes as she stood there. Her frustration had reached its limit, with people assuming she could not become a mother just because she was 21. But they'd all learn a valuable lesson from her. Haley was repeatedly rejected when she tried to enroll her 15-year-old in school. As a result, she assumed the schools were just overcrowded. It was only then that she discovered the truth, that their lack of interest in her would be regrettable, and they would come to regret not taking her more seriously. The life Haley led as a child was tough. During her childhood, her dad left and her mother spiraled out of control after the divorce, especially when her father remarried. It seemed like the young girl was dealing with blow after blow. And nevertheless, Haley knew that one day she would get out of this, and that then her life would be much better than it was now, in the crumbling house her mother owned. Haley spent most of her childhood. Eventually, though, she realized it was a place only nightmares could be described as. Only a few years remained for her, but she was starting to crumble. Once Haley reached the age of agevation, she moved out and vowed, and never looked back. After growing up in that house and growing up as a child in that environment, she had come to hate it. Her heart was torn apart when Haley came face to face with a girl in exactly the same position after her father passed away. The moments leading up to Gemma's 15th birthday, both parents had passed away. In addition, Gemma is living in similar conditions to Haley since their parents died, so there was no one who wanted to take her in among her family members who were alive. Without change, Gemma would be placed in foster care. Haley was devastated by Gemma's story. A brighter future for the teenager and a loving relationship with someone who could care for her were the only things she wished for her. In addition to thinking about the situation, Haley and her fiancé discussed it extensively. It became apparent to them that drastic measures would need to be taken. Haley headed to court that very day to get legal custody of Gemma. A public prosecutor gave Haley advice on how to proceed, and she immediately set to work. Despite Haley's optimism, her guardianship battle soon became more challenging than she had expected. Gemma's family members began sending threatening messages to Haley within a few weeks. Their goal was to halt her guardianship request, and they were willing to do whatever it took to get the job done. Despite her struggles, Haley persisted. Gemma already had her heart broken by these people once, and she wouldn't let them do so again. And even though Haley ignored Gemma's family's threats, they weren't done. They began approaching Haley after they discovered that she did not withdraw her application. Regardless of where Haley went, someone would speak up about her inability to care for a child and to deliver a message. Although none of them were willing to take Gemma in, they all claimed she was too young. A court verdict was just around the corner after weeks had turned into months. With each threat, Haley became more and more frightened. There was no doubt that these people knew how to reach her and where she lived. It was unclear what would happen once the decision was made. How bad could things get? It wasn't until Haley and her fiancé embarked on this journey that they realized what lay ahead. In order to give Gemma a second chance at life, they were willing to make sacrifices. Teenagers aren't easy to raise, and they knew that. However, they never anticipated how far things would go. Haley's request was heard by the court 4 months after it was submitted. The teen was not happy to learn that she was now Gemma's legal guardian. The whole situation puzzled Haley, who couldn't understand Gemma's anger, although if she were in the same position, she was sure she would be moody as well. Gemma was picked up from social services by Haley and her fiancé Bruce that very night. Haley, however, was in a state of nervous breakdown. Suddenly, the situation had taken a turn for the worse, and she had no idea how to take care of it. She was 21 years old. A few months after getting engaged to her lifelong love, she became a mother to an angry teen. Having made such a drastic decision, Haley was starting to question her decision. In the evening, Haley and Bruce brought Gemma home. It was a rough start to the relationship. It still irked Gemma that Haley had done all this without telling her. Suddenly, everything had changed in their lives, and everyone was feeling uncomfortable. Before long, they'd become a little family, and that would change quickly. The routine was gradually established over the next few weeks, for the little family. The relationship between Gemma and Haley was beginning to relax. and Haley tried nothing but to be a friend instead of a mother figure for Gemma Ma. Since Haley and Gemma were only a few years apart in age, Haley knew that trying to push Gemma too hard would backfire. However, the problems had only just begun. It was not easy to adjust to this new lifestyle. In addition to being around each other all the time, Haley and Bruce now had a grumpy teenager. As if this wasn't enough, Gemma still had to deal with the loss of her father. In addition, Haley was at a loss for how to comfort the teenager. Initially, Haley gave Gemma as much space as she could, but she had to adjust after a few weeks. Her classes would need to resume once she had enrolled in a new high school. Haley knew Gemma's teen years were hard enough, and she didn't want things to get worse by having her repeat the year. As a result, she began researching local schools. After contacting a few schools, Haley seemed to be having good luck. She received application forms from the schools she contacted. Choosing the closest one to home was Haley's choice. After filling out the forms and sending them back, she didn't know the worst was yet to come. Tears streamed down Haley's face as she stared at the rejection letter. Gemma was confused about the school's refusal to accept her. It was already halfway through the year and they were already full, so they assumed it had something to do with that. With each rejection she received, Haley's assumptions changed, so she decided to investigate further. The first school Haley applied to rejected her application, so she contacted them and asked why. Her world moved so quickly that she didn't even realize she was sitting in a boardroom. And it wasn't possible to apply for a high school on behalf of another student, the administrator told her at first. And Haley explained to her that she was not a student and her tone changed. The rest of the story is, unfortunately, a downhill slide. The group took a break and Haley was shocked when they returned. During the meeting, a police officer was sitting at a desk, taking statements from everyone present. "Are you telling me you called the police to report that my fiancé kidnapped a child and is trying to enroll said child in your school?" Bruce asked, his voice laced with irritation. As Bruce embraced Haley, he looked utterly guilty as he got up and wrapped his arms around her. "I'll have you know that Gemma was legally adopted by the two of us, and I have the paperwork to prove it," Bruce added. "Bish." Immediately, the tone of the school changed. Gemma was accepted right away and began classes the following day. Nevertheless, Haley faced many challenges ahead. When Haley and Bruce were out with Gemma, they got a lot of strange looks, but the next few months went smoothly. In spite of all the obstacles they had faced, the little family began planning their summer vacation. In the aftermath of their return, they were not prepared for what awaited them. Summer holidays have come and gone. Gemma was on her way to school before the realization fully took hold. Something seemed off that night when she returned home. After dinner, Haley approached Gemma to find out what was happening. She told her that she had a new math teacher who seemed to be very interested in her family. Usually, Mr. Brody avoided meddling in his students' affairs, but something about this family seemed off. In the teacher's lounge, rumors had been circulating, and he thought something was amiss. He asked Gemma what was really going on at home. Knowing that he had her best interests at heart might encourage her to open up. A murderous look was given to Mr. Brody during the conversation when he called Haley Gemma's mother, leaving the room in a fury. Gemma declared, "She's not my mother." He thought to himself, "That's interesting. Teenagers have acted out in the past, but this was different." Mr. Brody's suspicions were piqued when her words triggered his curiosity about what this situation was really about. Haley was invited to a parent-teacher conference by Mr. Brody after he had burnt all bridges with Gemma. Mr. Brody wasn't intrigued by Haley's punctuality. He was intrigued by something else. She was confused by her age. In the case of Gemma's mother, she would have given birth to her very young. It wouldn't make sense for someone so young to do this, in the same way that Gemma was irritated by the questions. Now, Haley was as well. In spite of this, she did inform Mr. Brody that she was not Gemma's biological mother before she left. Mr. Brody was even more intrigued when she mentioned adoption. Even if Haley had claimed to be Gemma's mother, he wouldn't have believed her, but something about them seemed off. It looked like they were related in a way. Further investigation revealed Gemma was adopted. But Mr. Brody wasn't able to get the whole story, so he wasn't convinced that the story was truthful. In his mind, he considered many scenarios, but only one made sense. His belief was that Haley and Bruce were hiding a major secret from the world at this point. Consequently, he confronted them. His face was bright red with embarrassment as he sat in Haley's living room. Indeed, it was true. There were a few details Haley and Bruce left out, but he never expected such huge hearts from two young people. Gemma and Haley share the same father. He had another daughter after remarrying, but her mother passed away. Haley felt responsible for looking after her stepsister after their father passed away. She did just that.